Archaeologists finally find Cleopatra's long-lost tomb. The past holds many secrets, and we're here to uncover them. Stick with us on this amazing discovery. No man will ever find my tomb. That's what Cleopatra supposedly said once, according to rumors. But it wasn't really about gender. She just didn't want any living soul disturbing her final resting place. What she really meant was that no human would ever discover where she was buried. But shockingly, one woman came closer than anyone else in history to finally finding the Queen's tomb. Meet Kathleen Martinez, a criminal lawyer who became an archaeologist. She became so obsessed with Cleopatra's story that she packed her bags and flew to Egypt. No official backing, no permission from the authorities. All she had was a deep determination to find Cleopatra's final resting place. You could say Kathleen was always ahead of the game. She skipped grades in school, mastered piano, chess, swimming, and martial arts, and grew up listening to intellectual debates at home. She even earned her law degree by the age of 19, but archaeology, that was her secret passion. She had never been to Egypt. She had never dug up a single artifact, but her obsession with Cleopatra dated all the way back to an argument with her father in 1990. That day she went into his library looking for a copy of Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. Her father, Fausto Martinez, a respected law professor, called Cleopatra a seductress. Kathleen refused to accept that. She argued that history had been completely unfair to Cleopatra, and that the Romans deliberately ruined her reputation. People had believed their version of the story for centuries. The debate lasted for hours. In the end, her father admitted maybe he'd judged Cleopatra too harshly. That conversation changed everything for Kathleen. From that moment on, she started reading every ancient text she could find, especially Plutarch's account of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The more she read, the more convinced she became. Cleopatra wasn't just a queen who fell for the wrong guy. She was a brilliant strategist playing a dangerous political game to keep Egypt independent. And the deeper Kathleen dug into history, the more she wondered, what if everyone had been looking for Cleopatra's tomb in the wrong place? That thought stuck with her. Even while raising her second child, she earned a master's degree in archaeology. Multitasking, right? Her mission to uncover the truth about Cleopatra. While most experts believe Cleopatra's tomb lies somewhere beneath modern-day Alexandria, along with 13 other royal tombs, Dr. Martinez had a different theory. She believed Cleopatra was buried in Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple dedicated to Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife. But to prove her theory, she needed to find a foundation plaque, a small stone slab about the size of a smartphone, placed under important temple structures. These plaques usually have inscriptions explaining when and why the temple was built. If she could find one that confirmed the temple was dedicated to Isis, Cleopatra's patron goddess, it would be hard evidence that this was the right place to search. Nothing could stop Martinez. She excavated the entire temple site, digging deeper than anyone had before. Her team discovered coins with Cleopatra's name and face, clear proof that she had a direct connection to the site. Then they found something even more intriguing, a tunnel used to bring water to the people, running from the temple all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So if parts of the temple had already sunk into the water, could Cleopatra's tomb be down there too? Martinez needed more proof to convince Egyptian authorities to let her search underwater. And despite all the obstacles, she finally found the missing foundation plaque. It showed that the pharaoh had donated a large area of Nubia to the goddess Isis. That was the confirmation she needed. The temple really was dedicated to Isis, backing up her theory with hard evidence. If one temple was still on land, Martinez suspected another might have collapsed into the sea, and that could be where Cleopatra's tomb was hidden. She needed help from underwater archaeology experts, so she reached out to Robert Ballard. Yes, the man who discovered the Titanic. With support from Egyptian authorities, she and her team started exploring the waters off the coast of Alexandria. What they found underwater was incredible. Massive stone structures, some as tall as 6 to 10 feet, in a spot that would have been shoreline thousands of years ago. They also found basalt blocks, the same type of stone used for statues in the first temple. Translation? These weren't just random rocks. They were the remains of a lost city buried under the sea for centuries. Now, All we can do is wait and see if Martinez and her team will finally uncover one of history's greatest mysteries, the final resting place of the extraordinary queen, Cleopatra. Here's some quick background. After her father, Ptolemy XII, died, the throne of Egypt passed to both Cleopatra and her brother, Ptolemy XIII, or at least that's how it looked. Cleopatra was only 18 at the time, and she reportedly married her 10-year-old brother. Yeah, ancient royalty had some very different customs. Even though there's no solid proof, the sibling bond between Cleopatra and her brother didn't last very long. Young Ptolemy XIII wanted all the power for himself and tried to push Cleopatra off the throne. She was forced to flee the country, but instead of sitting around feeling sorry for herself, she pulled together an army ready to march back and take what was hers. By the age of 21, Cleopatra was already in the Sinai desert, leading her troops and planning her return to the throne. By that time, Cleopatra had formed a powerful, both political and romantic partnership with Julius Caesar. In June of 47 BC, she gave birth to a son named Ptolemy Caesar, better known as Caesarion, whom many believe was Caesar's child. But even that didn't stop her from playing by the rules of Egyptian royalty. She married her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, as her second husband. Yes, despite her ongoing relationship with Caesar, she married another brother, because in her world, keeping power in the family was how the game was played. Still, her bond with Caesar remained strong. She even travelled to Rome with Ptolemy XIV on an official visit. But instead of acting like a royal guest, Cleopatra stayed at Caesar's private villa by the Tiber River. Then came a major turning point in March of 44 BC. Julius Caesar was assassinated. His death left Cleopatra in a very unstable political situation. To make things worse, her brother-husband Ptolemy XIV died shortly afterward, and some believe Cleopatra had a hand in that, leaving her as the sole ruler of Egypt. Meanwhile, Mark Antony was rising to power in Rome as Caesar's presumed successor. Wanting to assess Cleopatra himself, he summoned her, and she did not disappoint. Cleopatra made a grand entrance. She sailed into the city on a luxurious ship dressed like a goddess, and Antony was instantly captivated. He left his third wife in Rome and followed Cleopatra back to Alexandria, where their relationship turned into a full-blown royal affair. Together they had 3 children, and they fought side by side in a war against Caesar's adopted son Octavian for control of the Roman Empire. The last time Cleopatra was seen, she was in her tomb, fully dressed in royal finery, wearing a golden crown and lying on what the historian Plutarch described as a golden couch. After she and Antony were defeated at the Battle of Actium, Octavian's forces marched into Alexandria. Cleopatra, realizing the end was near, locked herself in her tomb surrounded by gold, pearls, silver and priceless art. She even threatened to burn it all rather than let the Romans take it. At the same time, Antony refused to be captured alive. He fell on his sword, but before dying he was brought to Cleopatra. She held him in her arms as he took his final breath. A little over a week later, Cleopatra made her own decision. Rather than suffer the humiliation of becoming Octavian's prisoner, she took her own life. Legend has it that she was bitten by a venomous asp, a snake. But history isn't entirely sure. Cleopatra was only 39 years old at the time. Sounds like a pretty full life, doesn't it? Today, the ancient city of Taposiris Magna, located on Egypt's northern coast, is just a shadow of its former glory. But underneath it might lie the answer to one of history's greatest mysteries, the location of Cleopatra's tomb. A recently discovered tunnel at the site is considered a marvel of ancient engineering. Excavations have uncovered a 43-foot-long structure underground, partially submerged in water. Its design is similar to the tunnel of Eupalinos in Greece, a famous feat of ancient construction where workers dug from both ends and met in the middle. The precision required for such a project, especially back then, was astounding. Archaeologists working at Taposiris Magna since 2004 believe this tunnel might actually lead to Cleopatra's lost tomb, and the evidence they've found so far supports that theory. For starters, the city and its temple were built by Cleopatra's ancestor, Ptolemy II. All the architecture seems to point to the temple being dedicated to Osiris, god of the afterlife, and his queen Isis. Throughout her reign, Cleopatra tried to associate herself with Isis, so it wouldn't be a surprise if she chose this spot as her final resting place. Although the tomb hasn't been found yet, research is ongoing and archaeologists are using modern technology to study the site more thoroughly. One tool they've been using is ground-penetrating radar, which allows scientists to see what's underground without digging. Because this tunnel is so old and fragile, researchers have to work with extreme precision. Being able to see underground first helps guide their digging efforts, and they've been using this method at the site since 2011. In the end, finding Cleopatra's tomb might be the key to finally putting together the last missing pieces of her story, especially the mysterious final chapter of her life that still captivates the world to this day. Cleopatra's death is still surrounded by mystery. To this day, we don't know exactly how she died. Some believe she let a venomous Egyptian cobra bite her. Others think she was so used to poisons that she even hid some in her hairbrush, just in case she ever needed it. But that doesn't necessarily mean she intended to use it on herself. We actually know a lot of fascinating things about Cleopatra, and honestly, some of them are just as surprising as the idea that she had her own personal hairstylist. Most images we see of Cleopatra show her wearing bold black eyeliner. That look was created by a woman named Iris, who was not only her personal makeup artist, but also one of her closest companions. She used a style of eyeliner that extended all the way to Cleopatra's temples, a technique still used today to make eyes pop. Iris played a key role throughout Cleopatra's life. Some even believe she was with her when she died. Now, despite all those carefully crafted looks, Cleopatra wasn't necessarily the great beauty people imagine, or at least that's what some modern research suggests. Sure, in modern films and art, she's portrayed as incredibly beautiful, with perfect symmetrical features. But if we look at ancient coins that show her likeness, she looks pretty average. In fact, some historians believe the coin images were even altered to make her look more powerful rather than more attractive. There isn't a single reliable image of her we can trust, and interestingly, most ancient writings don't focus on her beauty. They talk about her voice, her charisma, and her intelligence. Although Cleopatra became Egypt's most famous queen, she wasn't supposed to be. She had an older sister named Berenice, who was originally meant to inherit the throne. But Berenice died before that could happen, so Cleopatra stepped in. She took her role seriously. She focused on her education and traveled all over Egypt to get to know the people and understand their needs. She was just 18 years old when she took over, and she quickly became popular for her sharp mind and education. She also had great taste in literature. She was a big fan of Homer, the famous Greek poet and philosopher. Cleopatra loved writing as much as she loved reading. There are claims that she wrote a book on medicine and cosmetics, but there's no surviving copy of it today. Being a great ruler back then also meant being multilingual. Cleopatra clearly understood this. It's believed she spoke several languages, including Greek, Egyptian, Ethiopian, and a variety of Arabic dialects. Some even say she spoke Latin, though there's not much solid evidence for that. She might not have been drop-dead gorgeous, but she really cared about how she looked. She also paid attention to what she ate. Her diet was fairly simple. She enjoyed a lot of seafood, which makes sense, living near the Mediterranean. She was known to treat herself and her guests to stuffed pigeon, and she also ate plenty of vegetables and fava bean soup. Fruits, nuts, and honey were also part of her regular meals. A team of experts even recently tried to recreate her favorite perfume. Think of it as the ancient version of luxury fragrance. Cleopatra loved perfumes and believed they could influence how people treated her. The base of her scent was myrrh, a resin from a local tree. Other ingredients included cardamom, olive oil, and cinnamon. It wasn't like the perfumes we use today. It had a thicker texture and lasted much longer. At the height of her power, Cleopatra might have been the wealthiest person on earth. Back then, she ruled a massive territory stretching from modern-day Libya, across Egypt, all the way to Syria. That's the largest area ever governed by a woman. In today's money, her net worth might have been somewhere around $95 billion. Believe it or not, some say our modern calendar may have been inspired by Cleopatra. She introduced Julius Caesar to the idea of leap years and extra days. Following her advice, Caesar made these changes official in the Roman calendar. The ancient Egyptians already knew a year was slightly more than 365 days. They figured it out by studying Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, and determined the year was actually 365 and a quarter days. It was Elizabeth Taylor who really brought Cleopatra into modern pop culture when she played her in the 1963 film Cleopatra. At the time, it was the most expensive movie ever made, and a total Hollywood spectacle. The movie was originally supposed to cost around $2 million, but it ended up costing $44 million, mostly due to script and production problems. To make this iconic film, the producers created 79 different sets from scratch and designed over 26,000 costumes for the cast. Cleopatra's costumes alone, just for Elizabeth Taylor, cost about $200,000. Luckily for the producers, the film made headlines and was well received by critics, turning it into a box office success. A lot of people associate Cleopatra with another famous Egyptian ruler, King Tutankhamun, often called King Tut. But surprisingly, aside from the fact that they were both pharaohs, they really had nothing in common. For starters, King Tut lived over 1,300 years before Cleopatra, and they weren't even from the same background. Cleopatra had Greek Macedonian roots, while Tutankhamun was ethnically Egyptian. Now, something strange is buried under the sands of Giza, and scientists have no idea what it is. Archaeologists recently discovered a hidden structure near the Great Pyramids. While the Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the most famous landmarks in the world, it's not alone. It's surrounded by a massive royal burial ground full of tombs and ancient monuments. These belong to pharaohs, nobles, and high-ranking officials. Most of these tombs are above ground and are known as mastabas, rectangular, flat-roofed tombs built from limestone or mud brick. They've been studied for decades, but thanks to old documentaries and research, we now know they weren't just simple tombs. Many of them have deep, vertical shafts leading to underground burial chambers, places where the past was sealed away forever. Recently, archaeologists noticed a weird empty patch in the cemetery, an area completely unexplored. No minarets, no visible ruins, so they ignored it for years. But between 2021 and 2023, they decided to take a closer look. Instead of digging, they used ground-penetrating radar, a technology that works like an X-ray for the Earth. And what they found shocked them. Something was buried beneath the sand, something clearly man-made and long forgotten. They found a two-part underground structure. One part was shallow, L-shaped, about 33 feet long, and buried just 6.5 feet underground. But beneath that was a deeper, even more mysterious anomaly, a structure completely unlike anything else in the area. They called it a high-resistance anomaly, meaning it was very dense and solid, possibly made of sandstone or even metal. No one knows what's inside it yet. What's clear is that the L shape was man-made, not natural. That shallow part could be an entrance to whatever lies deeper below, but right now all they have are theories. It's filled with sand and gravel, which may have been deliberately packed in, maybe to hide or preserve whatever it is. We don't know yet. The archaeological team will need to excavate it to figure out what it really is and why it was built. Their first guess, it might be a lost burial chamber. Many tombs in Giza do have underground rooms, but most also have obvious surface markers. This one doesn't, which makes it unusual. Second guess, it could be an ancient offering chapel. Some were known to be built in this shape, though they were usually above ground, not buried like this. And finally, it could be something we've never seen before. If that's the case, it might rewrite everything we know about pharaonic burials. The only way to know for sure is to dig it up. And that's exactly what they're doing now. Excavations are already underway. Archaeologists are racing against time to uncover the truth, but there's a real risk. These ancient structures in Giza are fragile and must be handled very carefully. One wrong move could cause irreparable damage, so for now all we can do is wait and see what's buried there. These tombs have always been full of mystery. Unfortunately, many of those mysteries have been lost forever thanks to relentless tomb robbers. Egyptian tombs were built to protect the dead for eternity, but that didn't stop people from breaking in and stealing whatever treasures they could find. Tomb raiding has been going on for thousands of years, starting way back during the time of the pharaohs themselves. Some of the most famous tombs, like those in Giza, Saqqara, and the Valley of the Kings, have been looted. It was a widespread practice in ancient Egypt, and they took it very seriously. Tomb robbers dug secret tunnels to bypass traps and walls, bribed or threatened tomb workers for inside info, and opened up coffins to steal gold jewelry and artifacts. By the time modern archaeologists arrived, most of the tombs had already been cleaned out. Pharaohs were fed up with this. That's one of the reasons why the Valley of the Kings, a secluded royal burial site, was created. It was meant to be the ultimate safe zone for Egypt's rulers. The tombs were built deep underground, hidden in the desert. Massive stone blocks sealed off the passageways, and fake doors and traps were added to confuse grave robbers. They even wrote curses on the walls, warnings of terrible fates for anyone who dared to disturb the tombs. And that's actually where all those spooky mummy stories come from. Spoiler alert, none of that worked. Almost every tomb in the Valley of the Kings was completely looted within just 100 years of being sealed. Even the tomb of King Tutankhamun, one of the most famous in history, was broken into twice in ancient times. Some pharaohs tried to fight back. Rulers of the new kingdom started building hidden tombs with no obvious markers, hoping that would stop thieves from finding them. It didn't. In some cases, like Ramses II, the mummies were secretly moved to try to protect them. Still didn't matter. The tomb raiders always seemed to win. Why? Because these weren't just random thieves. They were skilled, organized, and well-connected. They knew exactly where to go. In fact, many of them were the same people who built the tombs in the first place, so they knew all the secrets. If they couldn't break through a door, they'd dig through walls, floors, even ceilings to get inside. And they didn't wait long either. Most tombs were hit just a few years after being sealed, before anyone had time to forget where the treasures were. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, next to that newly discovered structure, was looted long before modern times. By the time explorers got there, the only thing left inside was an empty granite box where the sarcophagus used to be. Sadly, it's not just gold they stole, it's history itself. The ancient Egyptians kept detailed records of what was buried and where, so when archaeologists compare those lists with what's been found, it's clear how much is missing, and it's usually all the good stuff. Most of those stolen artifacts never end up in museums. Instead, they vanish into private collections where no one can study them ever again, and that's just not fair. In fact, some countries have had enough and are fighting back. They're passing laws to get their history back from collectors. In Italy, for example, if you own an ancient Roman artifact, you now have to prove you got it legally. China is actively hunting down looted items and trying to recover them from Western collectors. Egypt recently passed strict laws making it completely illegal for regular citizens to own any ancient Egyptian artifacts. But countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany and Switzerland, they don't seem to mind if rich people own pieces of someone else's history. Take the British Museum. It's literally built on looted items. European empires conquered half the world and took whatever they wanted back home. Their museums are filled with this stuff, and most of the time they refuse to return it. Look at the Rosetta Stone. It was taken from Egypt by Napoleon's army, then stolen by the British after they beat the French. Egypt's been asking for it back for years, but still hasn't gotten it. Or the Parthenon marbles. Those huge sculptures were taken from the Parthenon in Athens by a British lord in the 1800s. Greece has been begging for them back ever since, but the United Kingdom isn't interested. And let's not forget the Mesoamerican artifacts scattered across museums. European explorers raided Maya and Aztec temples, taking statues, jewelry, and sacred objects. Now Mexico is fighting to get them returned. So really, it wouldn't be a surprise if this mysterious underground chamber has already been looted too. But if it hasn't, if it's truly a new discovery, could it be one of the few tombs that actually escaped the hands of grave robbers? Could there still be ancient artifacts down there, untouched for 4,500 years? We can only hope the thieves didn't get there first. It honestly feels like archaeology has woken up recently, spicing up the news with incredible new discoveries. From dinosaur fossils in peaceful Iowa to decoding bad omens from Babylonian tablets, history is suddenly revealing secrets like never